Thank you very much for the introduction, Charlie.
Hi,
Uh,
Dr. Remo. How are you doing?
yeah, I'm all right.
Good.
So,
So,
should I?
so much. First of all, thanks so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here today. We are super excited for today's webinar. I know I am. I'm sure everyone else is also. So we'll get straight to it. So I think you've got a presentation that you're going to present with us today as well. So I'm going to
Yeah,
hand the virtual floor over to you, and this is where the technical part comes in. So I
yeah,
will leave you to it. Good
there
luck,
it
and it's all.
is. That's great. Thank you very much. And I'm wondering, can people here ask questions in the chat, or should I just take it away and not really expect many questions?
If you just take it away, Dr. Remo, and then I'm sure we'll have some questions at the end.
All right, that's fantastic. So I'll just get a move on here. Um, so the art of co-regulation, which I really do believe absolutely is an art. Um, when we're talking about regulation in general, we have a couple of different kinds, actually only two kinds. We have self-regulation and co-regulation. And self-regulation obviously is when we are in adulthood. Let me just get to. So when we are in adulthood, actually self-regulation normally starts in the teenage years. That's where it really starts to to take off. But obviously, as we're growing up, especially as kids, or if situations are really tough, then even as adults, we can need self or co-regulation. Um, in childhood, we need co-regulation because emotions are something new. That's where we're experiencing all of these really strong emotions. We experience sadness, anger, frustration, all of these things that we're actually not trained in. That comes with life experience. And so, as with anything, the first time that we encounter something new, that's where we really need help to understanding and knowing how to navigate it. And if the emotion is too overwhelming, that's where we can need some help with managing that emotion. There's like a common saying that when we are kids, the role of the parents is simply to be able to be a container for that emotion, process it, and give it back to the child. um, and that's what we're going to be talking a little bit about today. Another point that I want to make here, which is quite important, is that when we're talking about self-regulation, it's we're oftentimes capable of self-regulating because we're able to use logical thinking. When we're talking about a child, they are not that great at logical thinking. As a matter of fact, they're oftentimes quite irrational. For example, there's a monster beneath my bed because I I feel like there's one. So that's when I'm talking about drawing conclusions based on my emotions rather than reality. Kids are really good at doing that, whereas adults are much better at drawing conclusions based on reality. So that's also why when something really bad is happening, let's say um, just an example that we're getting into a car crash. Of course, that's a really upsetting experience, but at the end of the day, it's also able to rationalize that okay, no bones are broken, I'm fine. The car might be a mess, but we have insurance. Everybody is fine, and we can just buy a new car. Whereas, of course, for the child, they're not able to think that far. They're just in the chaos of the emotion, and that's when we have to step in and co-regulate. Before I go into what good co-regulation look like, I kind of want to. Oh, it's a little bit hard to navigate this. Um, okay, I kind of want to give a little bit of a scientific explanation of how does the brain actually work, and in particular, how does your brain work when it's under duress, stress, or in a highly emotional state. And then we're going to be talking about how we can co-regulate. So that's it. Adopting our communication style according to the emotions of the person that we're trying to co-regulate. And then I'm gonna give some details on what kind of strategies I teach the young ones that I'm working with. And then I'm also gonna give a couple of examples of other therapeutic modalities. So yeah, very excited to share that with you. And I'm a little bit of a geek when it comes to the brain, so I'm going to share a few pictures and give you a bit of scientific information. That's only going to be around 5 to 10 minutes, so hopefully it's not going to bore you too much. And for other people who are co-geeks, you might actually quite enjoy this. Um, when we're talking about the brain, we have we can sort of like divide it into three different stages. And the one that we're trying to use the most is the top one here, and that's called the neocortex. And that is where all logical thinking is located, and in particular here in the frontal lobe. When we're talking about executive functions, so that um, that's pla- planning, delayed gratification, understanding logic, thinking multiple steps ahead. That in particular is located here in the prefrontal lobe. As you can see here, there's also something called the limbic brain, and that's in the limbic system in the middle of the brain here, and that's actually where many of our emotions are centralized. And the limbic brain is also in part where the fight or flight system is. So that means that as soon as the fight or flight system kicks in, or at least when we get a little bit emotional, when we're getting stressed, we're drawing much more activity of the brain down here, down to the emotions, and not so much up here in the logical part of the brain. Of course, and if we experience something that is really, really severe, that means, for example, a lion is just behind us. That's when we go all the way down here to the reptilian brain, where it's really the, the true function of fight or flight. The limbic brain can still be a little bit like fight or flight, but it's much more diverse, and that's where we feel like quite complex feelings as well. But so, for example, frustration, anxiety, nervosity, all of these things. But the reptilian brain is really a severe case of fight or flight. And the closer that we're getting up to this part of the brain, the more rational we can think. And obviously, when we're in the true fight or flight mode, that's just absolutely not possible. So don't even try. That's going to be important when we're getting to the co-regulation part. The other thing that I want to share with you is that we can actually measure on the brain. So what we do is we actually measure the blood flow of the brain, and the reason that we do that is because when we measure the blood flow of the brain, we can see where does the brain have the most activity. And we can clearly see that a person who's emotional, a person who's stressed, a person who's anxious, that person will have less blood flow in the parts of the brain that are involved in learning, adapting behaviors, and thinking logically. Whereas a person who, yeah, there'll be less activity there. Whereas a person who is calm, a person who is well centered, a person who's down to earth at that time will have increased blood flow in the areas that are involved in learning new behaviors. On the flip side of that, we actually see increased in blood flow in the areas of the brain that are involved in habitual behavior when we're under stress. Again, that becomes very important later on. Most of you, I'm not sure, know about the autonomous nervous system and the two parts. We have the parasympathetic nervous system, which we see over here on the left side, and the sympathetic nervous system over here on the right side. So on the right side, we're seeing elevation in heart rate. We're seeing that the lungs are expanding. We're seeing that the digestive system is shutting off. The immune system is shutting down as well. And we're seeing an increase in epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, and adrenaline. That is all of these things are happening when we're under stress, when we feel endangered. And that's actually a really, really important function to have, because if there's a lion behind us and we really, really need to run in order to survive, we don't need digestion. We don't need rational thinking. We don't need our immune system. We don't need to feel pain. All we need to do is direct all of the energy of the body towards getting away. And that's what's happening when the sympathetic nervous system, to a very, very, very high degree, is activated. On the other side of that, we have the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's probably the most active when we're sitting on a beach, on a vacation, and we're just looking at the sea. We're drinking some nice tea, whatever it may be, and that's a point where our digestion is working really, really well. Our immune system is working well. Our heart rate is slow. We don't need that much of lung function, and that is also where the upper part of the brain is the most active. The reason that that is important is because that when a child gets upset, when they're in affect, whether they're feeling fear, anxiety, frustration, stress, whatever it may be, that is the time where the sympathetic nervous system is activated. Because the body and the nervous system is designed to help us survive. And from thousands and thousands of years back, usually the survival mechanism would be to get away from danger or hunt food for, yeah, animals that we can eat. Um, in the complexity of today's world, the dangers that we are facing now is, for example, the fear of failing my exam, not getting my salary, people gossiping about me, and that fear can also trigger a stress response. So all of the functions that are actually designed to keep us alive suddenly also get activated by things that doesn't necessarily are life threatening, but they feel threatening to the nervous system regardless. As I mentioned before, when the sympathetic nervous system is quite active, that is when we think the least logically, and that is the reason why our number one job as adults, as the people who co-regulate with the child, our number one job is simply to help the child calm down, and talk them through the experience and make sense of the internal chaos. And by doing that, we're also developing their emotional intelligence. Most of you have most likely gone through something that was mentally draining. That can be a breakup, that can be a hard situation at work. Regardless, when we're going through that experience, we kind of learn how we react, how other people react, and how I can best respond. So through difficult situations, we're actually developing our emotional IQ. That principle is exactly the same with the young ones. It's just at a more foundational level. Um, so what we want to do when a child is feeling any kind of emotion is first of all talk them through it, and make sure that they know that we are there for them. We're helping them make sense of the situation. And as an example, I can give that some years back, my nephew, who at the time was 4 years old, he's quite a wild child, and he was running around in the courtyard, and he actually fell and hit his knee, not very hard, but he was having so much fun that the contrast between having all of that fun and suddenly feeling pain was an absolute shock to him. So what happened was he started crying profusely, and I picked him up, and all I said was, "Wow, I can really see that you were having so much fun, and then suddenly you just fell, and that was a big shock, and I can just imagine that you felt the pain, and then you were so surprised, and then you got really, really scared." And what happened there was that he looked at me and was like, "Yeah, I got really, really scared." And then he actually stopped crying because the pain wasn't so bad, but he was scared. So he cried out for help. When a child gets scared, they cry for help. That's their survival mechanism. But by talking him through the situation and letting him know why he actually had the reaction that he did, he kind of understood that, oh yeah, I got scared, but there wasn't really much to be scared of because actually the pain is not so bad. And 2 minutes later, he was up and running again, and luckily he didn't fall again, at least on that day. Um, Another example I can give, I guess, which really speaks to the emotional intelligence development, is that a lot of the people that we see here, and that's young ones, that's teenagers, that's adults, it's everybody. Development of the emotional intelligence, and that's understanding of myself, but it's also understanding of the environment that I'm in, other people, and how I respond and they respond, and how I can regulate myself. That's such an important skill to develop, and a lot of the people that I'm working with, when we're talking through some experiences that are really hard, when they're learning to understand why they reacted in the way that they did, how they can navigate that, and how to deal better with the situation next time, it makes them feel much more calm. And unfortunately, I'm sometimes working with people who are in positions where they essentially describe that the danger is gonna be there, because I'm living in a house, I'm living in a situation where emotions go really high. It can either be due to conflicts with the parents or with the siblings, whatever it may be. If you're living in an environment where there always is a fear of some kind of danger happening, such as an argument, at least understanding how you're gonna respond, why you respond in that way, and why the situation is occurring, is really important in order to feel that I have a little bit of control over the situation. And especially, essentially, what they're describing is that sometimes it feels like I'm living in a minefield, but before they they developed this emotional intelligence, they were living in a minefield but didn't have a map. And at least now they have a map, so they kind of know how to navigate the situation. Yeah, so that was that. And there are four areas of emotional intelligence, and the first one is self-awareness, and then obviously self management. So understanding what is happening to me, why am I reacting in this way, and what can I then do. Obviously, on the other side here, we have social awareness. So why are people doing what they're doing, and when they're doing something that I don't really like, how can I manage that in the best way? All right, let me see here. So I guess now we're coming to the most important part. So what does good co-regulation look like? And as I was talking about in the beginning of this presentation, when we're stressed, when we're in effect, that's when you're thinking the least logically. And my number one mistake as a psychologist, and the number one mistake that I see with parents here, not just here in Dubai, pretty much anywhere, is that when we see that somebody is in pain, we rush to help them with solutions. Meaning that, for example, if a teenager is stressing out over their exams, we have a tendency to to rush in and say, "Oh, but you should study more, or you should organize yourself like this," or whatever it may be. And chances are that most likely that teenager already thought about that. Secondly, when we rush in with solutions, if that person is in a elevated level of stress, they're not thinking logically. So all we need to do there is help them to calm down first. And that means that we're talking to them, we're trying to understand their situation. And if we just come with what they have to do, again, the logical mindset, the problem solving mindset, they actually have a tendency to go into their castle here and just uh, take up the bridge and not really listen to you. Because how can we take advice from anyone who doesn't truly understand my situation? And I guess the point is here that I only trust someone 100% when they have shown to me that they actually understand me. And So this is what I do a lot of in my work. And in the beginning, when I started my work, especially with the young ones, I would always jump in and try to give them the best solutions. And what I realized over time was that that was actually not at all effective. What I needed first was to establish rapport and really show them that I understood them, that I was on their side, and through that I could help them to calm down. And when they were calm, then I could give all of my great solutions. But the way that we make people calm down is, as I mentioned before, to make them feel like they're understood and make them feel like we're on their side. So oftentimes I'm actually starting out with, when I'm having a conversation with someone, I use a lot of paraphrasing. So that means that when a person is saying that, yeah, I'm really really anxious because I'm worried about my exams, I'm worried about failing this year, immediately I'm jumping into, oh yeah, I can really hear that you're worried about your exams here, and especially because you were talking about how you're fearful of failing this year. I don't say I hear you. Rather, I prefer to paraphrase. And the reason is that it's so easy to say that I hear you without actually listening to a person. And oftentimes when you paraphrase, what's gonna happen there is like people are just gonna settle down and engage much more in the conversation because you're proving to them that you're really taking the time here to listen. If you didn't listen, you wouldn't be capable of paraphrasing. And the same with step number 2 here. I next to never say, I understand you or I feel you. I much more try to say, for example, with the exam situation, that if I was in your shoes, or when you're saying that you're worried about failing this year, I can just imagine that must make you so nervous and really make you feel uncomfortable. And the reason that I do that instead of saying I understand you or I feel you is that if I can let people know that I can almost read your mind and I can verbalize what emotions you're going through, that's a really powerful signal that I'm sending to you, that I'm really trying to emphasize with you here. And usually when you're able to do just those two, you're able to really establish a foundation where you can talk more. Whereas if you take it from another angle and just go in and say, okay, I hear you, I feel you, but what you need to do is study harder. That's going to create absolutely no bond with the person, and it actually may be the case that they're going to be more annoyed with you. But if you're taking the, the time there to show them that you're there for them, and that you listen and you care, that's going to have the opposite effect. If we're going further down the list, um, one of the things that I do a lot of as a psychologist, and what I actually see is one of the most powerful tools. And these two, like 1 and 2, paraphrasing and labeling the emotions, they're kind of like the foundations. But for example, when I'm having a child who's coming in and saying, "Yeah, I just really wanted to kick my sister because she used my toy," I don't go in and agree with them and say, "Yeah, you should kick your sister because she took your toy." But what I can do is I can go in there, and instead of agreeing with the logic, I can go in there and I can agree with the emotion and say, "Oh, what? Your sister used your toy. I know that's one of your favorite toys." And I can just imagine that when she did that, you got so angry because you wanted to play with that toy yourself. And again, here I'm not judging him. I'm not telling that person what to do. All I'm doing at this stage is simply letting them know I'm here for you and I understand you and I'm on your side. And when they are able to see that we are on their side, that's when they are ears do like this. They open up. Now they can listen. Conversely, if we're trying to say, you shouldn't kick your sister, then they're going to go into defense mode. And that's not a mode that's good for co-regulation. So again, we shouldn't agree with the logic here. We should just agree with the emotions first, figure out what do they actually feel and why do they feel that, talk them through it. That's also going to develop their self-awareness of why they are reacting to certain situations in the way that they do. The next couple of steps here is that once that is done, oftentimes I'm asking for more information, simply to show them that I want to take the time here. I really want to help you to solve this issue, and we can also do some affirmation, which is essentially, instead of just talking about the situation at hand, we also allow to like sprinkle in a little bit of affirmation, which is, for example, and do you know what, I hate to see you upset because I care about you so much and I just want you to have fun all day, and then this is happening and it really annoys me because I just want you to have the best day. So not only is that showing that we understand their side, but also that we really care about them. And as I did just now, we also allowed to express our own emotions, so sort of let them know how does their emotional state affect us. But we should not lead with that, and it also should not become overwhelming. So it shouldn't be like, oh yeah, it's really stressing me out that you are angry, because that obviously doesn't help the child. So it should much more be like, oh, it really makes me sad to be you upset, because I care about you so much. So there's a little bit of little bit more of affirmation in there. When we're able to do that, oftentimes what you're seeing is a child who's actually able to calm down, really get into the sort of like the parasympathetic nervous system, and that also means that that child suddenly is able to use this part of the brain much more. Whereas if you're going into a back and forth about, no, you shouldn't be kicking your sister, you can play with a different toy, if going directly into that, they're just going to go into defense mode and they're going to stay here, because what's happening is that they feel attacked. They're already dysregulated. So if we're coming in there and don't want to see the situation from their point of view, then they're just going to go into defense mode, and that's going to delay the process by which we're going to get up into this part of the brain. What I oftentimes see in my work is that actually when I'm able to start with the co-regulation and just help them to calm down, agree with their emotion, all of that, then we can much quicker come up here. And then what's going to happen is that they're actually kind of come out and say, oh, but maybe my reaction was actually a little bit too strong, because I do have a lot of other toys that I could play with. So maybe I shouldn't have kicked my sister. But that is only happening when they're not in defense mode. That's not happening when we're having that back and forth. Furthermore, if that is happening consistently, that they know that whenever they're getting into a dysregulated state, that they're not going to be met with judgment by default. What they're going to be met with is understanding, and a person who's really trying to help them through the situation. And when they feel confident that whenever I'm going to my mom or dad, I can go to them with a really bad emotion and they're going to help me to calm down. When we can see that consistently, or when the child consistently experiences that, that's also going to make them feel less helpless when they are feeling those really strong emotions, because there's that confidence that I have this one person that I can go to, and no matter how bad I feel, they can help me to calm down. Feeling helpless and hopeless when you're in a really bad emotional state only exacerbates that emotion. So having the confidence that my parent can help me to calm down is such a valuable element. Also, it creates for some really, really good conversations where we can talk through situations. So rather than having those big back and forths where we're talking about who has the blame and who was in the right, we're having actually conversations about, was I overreacting? Why did I get upset? Why did she take my toy? And we can do that because sorry, we can do that because now the child is calm. Now the child can actually leave the emotions aside, take a step back, and be able to objectively evaluate, was this actually an appropriate reaction or did I overreact? And again, that's kind of foster emotional intelligence, but it really is going to help build such a strong bond as well, because there's hardly anything that is as bonding as being able to take a bad situation and turn it into something positive, turn it into a learning experience. And that is what the child is going to be experiencing when we master these steps, and obviously other techniques, but this is a foundation. All right. There are absolutely time where talking is not possible. And oftentimes when I'm working with the young ones, I'm using this one because it's nicely visual and graphic. But when we are uncomfortable, when we're in control, but struggling, that's when we can still have a good conversation. That's when we can talk people down. If people are up here by 7, 8, 9, 10, oftentimes paraphrasing, labeling emotions, standing on the side, showing that we care, using affirmation, pretty much none of that works. At that point in time, what they need might be a big hug, but it may also be that they just have to go to their room, scream into a pillow, punch a bed, whatever it may be. Like, the point being that there are definitely times where the talking simply doesn't work, because before, when I was talking about like the limbic brain and the reptilian brain and the logical brain, they're too far down, they're too far removed from the logical brain. And again, when that is happening, it is completely fine to say that you just go to your room, or you just stand here and you hug me and squeeze me, and you can shout and you can scream. And then once we are down here, once we're down to the, like, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm actually in control, that's when we can talk through the experience. And for some people that takes minutes. For other people it can take hours. And that has to be okay as well. We can't really have these productive conversations before we're at least down to a 6 or so. When we still seeing that we are out of control, it can be really, really hard to have that good conversation. So a couple of things that can help here. Obviously, disengaging, going to your room, do puzzles, listen to music, all of those behavioral things are fine. Another thing that can help, a lot of the young ones that I work with actually really like the tense and relax technique. And so for everyone that's watching here, what I'd encourage you to, so that you can try it on yourself, is try to take your fist here, and then when I say go, sorry, I need a bit more water. When I say go, we simply count to 10, and then you just have to squeeze as hard as you possibly can. And optimally, you should actually be squeezing so hard that it's actually hurting your fingers just a little bit. And it's not because we want to feel pain, but we just want to make sure that the muscles are tensing up greatly. So on my go, we can do that for 10 seconds. So I say go, and then you just squeeze as hard as you can, and I'm going to count. So go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you can just relax, put your arms down by your side, and notice if you're a little bit more relaxed than before. And for some people, they actually feel an immediate effect, and it can be a really, really powerful tool, especially because you can do it with your hands, you can do it with your arms, your back, whatever muscle group you want, you can use it there. um, and that can kind of help take the edge off at times, and kind of make us calm down, activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and make us think a little bit more clearly. What I will say is that this definitely doesn't work for everyone, but if it works, like what I oftentimes do is I have a bunch of techniques, and then we try all of them out with young ones, and then we just kind of pick and choose whatever they responded well to. So this is definitely one of those that you can try out with your young one. The other one that I use is a little bit of a mindfulness technique, and it's a breathing exercise, and it's actually something that I use quite a bit with, especially the young ones, because what I find is that the older that a person is, the better they are at kind of working on the intellectual stuff, like cognitive therapy and all of that. Whereas with young ones, and especially if there's neurodiversity, oftentimes we have to resort to more behavioral techniques, as they're just more simple to approach. So the second one that I have here is a breathing exercise. And with the breathing exercises, what's important there is that we're thinking about it as if the lungs are in need of a cleansing. So normally we would just kind of like breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, but we would never like go to the extremes. So we would never like exhale 100% and never inhale 100%. Actually, with the breathing exercises, for them to work really, really well, and for us to activate the vagus nerve, which is then activating the parasympathetic nervous system, we kind of want to go to those extremes of the lung function. So what I'm inviting you to do with me here now is take a couple of really, really, really deep breaths, but we're taking them in through the nose, and then we're imagining that our lungs are a balloon, which we need to fill up with air on until they almost burst. And then once we've gotten to that point, we hold for 3 seconds, and then we exhale through the mouth, and we do that 3 times. And I am the only one on camera, so I'm a little bit self-conscious, but I hope I don't look too foolish here, and I hope that you all join me at home. So big breath in through the nose. And what's important again is that we're breathing all the way in and all the way out, and we do it 2 more times. Last time. And again, the breathing exercises is something that some people just respond tremendously well to, and other people just absolutely do not. If you joined me in this exercise and you actually felt like you was a little bit more relaxed afterwards, chances are that you're actually going to respond really well to mindfulness in general. The exercise that I showed you just now is as simple as it possibly can get, and there's much more complexity to the mindfulness exercises that you can engage in. But it's just really good to start with this exercise to see if you're actually responding to it, because if you do, you can go further down that path, and if you don't, you don't need to waste your time on that. Okay, so those are some of the techniques that I use to kind of get us all the way from a 10, or like anywhere from 7 to 10, and down in the 6 and below area, where we can actually start to have these really good and productive conversations. Okay. I should have showed you that picture while I was doing the exercise. That would have been more blissful. Okay. Other therapies that we do, and kind of depends on the age of the child, and also what they respond well to, and also the level of intellect. But thoughts create emotions, and if we have a tendency to catastrophize, or if we have a tendency to overthink, then we will also have quite extreme emotional responses. So, for those of you who don't know about cognitive behavioral therapy, a big part of that is actually focusing on what are my patterns of thinking, and am I thinking accurately relative to the world that I'm living in? An example that I can give is that, and I'm kind of like a little bit embarrassed to admit that, but in the beginning, when I moved to Dubai, I would always get quite upset when I was driving in the traffic here, because I felt like people were speeding, honking at me, blinking at me, cutting me off, all of that, and where I come from, Denmark, people really follow the rules all of the time. So for me, this was kind of like um, a surprising situation to be in, and almost every day that I would venture out in in traffic, and especially because at that point in time I was driving a really small car, so I was getting bullied on the road. Um, but it would make me really upset. I would get angry about it, and I would tell myself, these people should drive in a different way. They shouldn't honk, they shouldn't blink, they shouldn't cut me off, they shouldn't speed, all of that. But then what I realized over time is that that's actually my thinking making a mockery out of me, because my expectations are not aligned with reality. Because my reality is that I'm coming to the Middle East, and I'm expecting everybody to drive as they do where I come from. But we are in a completely different part of the world. So why am I doing That's ridiculous. And the point being that I had to realign my expectations to the situation that I was going into with reality. And the reality was that when you're driving in Dubai, sometimes you're going to get honked at, you're going to get blinked at, you're going to get cut off to a much higher degree than where I come from. And if I'm not prepared for that, then I'm not prepared for reality. And that's quite kind of like a silly example, but that goes for so many things in life. Almost all anger, frustration, annoyance, almost all of that is coming from misaligned expectations. And when we're able to pinpoint where is my misalignment here, and we're able to correct that. So for example, for me, that was that every time that I got into my car, I had to tell myself, Remo, you're gonna get blinked at today. You're gonna get honked at. Most likely, you're gonna get cut off. People are gonna speed, and that's how it is here. When I was able to prepare myself for that, my frustration and anger and annoyance and general levels of stress reduced dramatically. And very often we're seeing this, especially with young ones who have a tendency to think that the whole world revolves around them. For example, my sister shouldn't take my toy because all of these toys are mine. Nobody should play with my toys. But then you're living in a place like where you're sharing with your sister is 3 years old. Most likely she doesn't even understand what's mine and what's yours. So the reality of the situation is that at some point people are going to take our toys and play with them, and if we're having a meltdown over that, which some kids unfortunately do, but then there's a misalignment of expectations to how much control you can have over your toys, unless you're locking them in a vault every single day. um yeah, there's a lot more the cognitive aspect here. But yeah, I guess I can mention to that a lot of people have a tendency to jump to conclusions. So we tend to make up scenarios in our mind. For example, I'm not going to do well in the exam. They're going to fail me. They're going to ask me all kinds of questions that I can't answer. They're going to laugh at me, yada yada yada. All of that is essentially me jumping to conclusions because the situation hasn't happened yet. And oftentimes, jumping to a conclusion is combined with catastrophizing, where we only think about the worst case scenarios. And since thoughts create emotions, when we catastrophize and when we think about the worst case scenarios all the time, that's going to create unrealistically painful emotions. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to say about that. So that's CBT. Then, oh yeah, and I wanted to show you this beautiful picture because as you can see here, there's a path. And the reason that there's a path there is because a lot of people or animals have walked here. There's no path over here. And that's because this area of the forest is not used that much. But this path is used a tremendous amount and therefore it has become much more pronounced. And the brain works in exactly the same way, that the areas of the brain and the patterns of thinking that we tend to use a lot, they become stronger and stronger and stronger. And the areas of the brain and the patterns of thinking that we don't use much, they tend to become weaker and weaker and weaker. So if we catastrophize a, a lot, if we always try to think about the worst case scenario, then that's what we're going to train our brain to do. If we always try to be optimistic, that's what we're going to train our brain to do. Now, I don't very much advocate for reckless optimism because it can definitely be just as dangerous as negative thinking. Because if we're overly optimistic, for example, if I'm just going to say, "Oh, I'm definitely going to pass this exam without studying at all," most likely I'm going to fail there. Point being that positive thinking is not always good, and negative thinking is not always bad. What we need to be is realistic. So if this exam is really really easy to pass and I know all of the material, then I don't need to study. If it's my first exam and it's for it's an entrance exam to NASA, then most likely I need to study a lot. And most likely if I'm setting the expectation that I'm going to pass in the first try, especially since I know absolutely nothing about rocket science, then I'm most likely setting the wrong expectations to myself. Again, point being, thoughts need to be aligned with reality, and if they're not, it's going to set us up for failure and can cause frustration, annoyance, stress, anxiety, and ultimately depression. When we consistently can adjust our mindset and train our brain to look at the world in a realistic way, that is also the path here that's going to be trained, and the path that's going to be stronger and more pronounced. I guess point being that CBT, when we're talking about that, it's not a one session and then you're off kind of therapy. It's a little bit of a process where you consistently on a daily basis have to pinpoint what kind of mind mistakes or thinking mistakes that you make and correct them, and then over time your thinking patterns is going to be more aligned with reality. Another thing that we work with is EMDR. It's not really well known in non-psychology social circles, I guess, but it's something that we oftentimes use for trauma therapy. Essentially, what the principle is that memories can be stored in quite strong ways, and if we have traumatic experiences that we continue to think about and continue to affect our mood, even if we can think about it, like think backwards and think, oh, it wasn't so bad and I'm stronger now, and so forth, the memory can still be stored in the nervous system. And what you can do in therapy is go through that experience one more time. For example, if it's a car crash, and there's trauma or even PTSD there to the point where a person remembers the situation, and they can feel how it felt when they were uh, clutching the steering wheel, any smells, any sounds that there were, the pain. If they can sense that almost in the same way as when they were in the situation, that's definitely a trauma. And what you can do is relive that, but then we're doing some techniques at the same time, which makes the nervous system response to the memory less and less strong. So yeah, that's really helpful when it comes to trauma. Anger. I think that anger is an interesting one, and here also really comes emotional intelligence part, that I just want everyone to kind of like understand that anger oftentimes is not just anger. Anger oftentimes is a proxy for fear, or for annoyance, or for frustration. Oftentimes anger is something that we do to protect ourselves. And so when, for example, a boy is upset that his sister is taking hi- his toys, most likely it's simply a protection, and it's him feeling hurt that somebody is using my toys. And if we tell that person that you shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't raise your voice, yada 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 yada, we're kind of approaching it in the wrong way, and most like that person will feel misunderstood, because the anger is not the primary thing for him. The primary thing is, I was hurt. That's why I show the anger. The anger is my protection from being hurt again. But the core of the situation is being hurt. And that's why when we're taking a child through that situation, and we're talking through it, we can't focus just on the anger. We need to figure out what's beneath that, because otherwise that person will feel misunderstood. All right. I can see we only have like maybe 5-10 minutes left. So I think I'm gonna say that was it for today's presentation. And then if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to take those.
Amazing, Dr. Remo. Thank you so much for your time today. I mean, it's been absolutely amazing to hear you share your expertise and your experience, and pretty much making our webinar a real success today. There have been some questions come in, so I will fire them at you. There's some good ones. So first of all, with your experience, how would you recommend approaching situations where a loved one's anxiety or depression leads to emotional outbursts?
Hmm. It almost always will, and I guess it's about resolving that anxiety, because anxiety is a funny one, where it tends to occupy people's minds, not just in the situation, but throughout the day. And when you're having negative thoughts that are sort of just occupying your mind for large parts of the day, that really causes you to have a chronically elevated level of stress. And when that is happening, that's just making you feel worn out. It's almost like we can go to the gym every day, and we can work out for an hour, right? We can put that barbell on our back, walk around, squat, all of that. But if you're putting a barbell on a person's back and ask them to have it there for the whole day, that's just draining, and anybody is going to break at some point from that. So it's really about resolving that anxiety, so that they don't carry that all day.
Fantastic. And the next question that's come in, I think this is quite a good one, is can you provide examples of techniques that help foster calmness and emotional balance, especially with someone who has ADHD?
Yeah, ADHD is an interesting one, because what we're oftentimes seeing there is elevated levels of impulsivity. And with impulsivity comes, like, first of all, I believe that 40% of people with ADHD also have anxiety at some point in their life. So oftentimes what is happening there is that since the since the level of executive functions for a person with ADHD is reduced, they also have a tendency to much easier become overwhelmed. You're asking for specific techniques. I actually think that a lot of what I was talking about today would be what I would want to do. But I guess for a person with ADHD, we would oftentimes have to spend a little bit more time in the talking space. In the I understand you, I feel you, like, but proving that, not saying that, and take a little bit more time before we go into the logical conversations.
Yeah, definitely 100% agree. And some of the techniques, I think we did a workshop with you recently with the team here at our dojos, and the techniques that we used were fantastic. And it's definitely something that we're using with our students as well. So it's been a real insight, which is great. And the final question: what advice would you give to partners who feel emotionally drained from supporting a loved one through frequent emotional highs and lows?
Right. That's going to be an answer with modifications, because if it's a child that is causing this, obviously you can't really get away from the situation. You kind of just have to be there, and if that's the case, actually, oftentimes it's a matter of seeking out your own support. That can be with your partner, that can be with a psychologist. Have them co-regulate you, actually learning some techniques there. I was talking about before about like how when I came to Dubai, the traffic was really making me upset here, because my expectations were not realistic. Oftentimes when we're feeling emotionally drained, it's also because we're setting unrealistic expectations to ourselves, and especially when we're talking about a child with neurodiversity, we have a tendency to think that I should be able to regulate my child. I should be able to make it so that my child doesn't have any meltdowns. I should be able to be the perfect parent, and oftentimes those expectations are just too high. If we're having, especially a child with neurodiversity, it's almost impossible to completely avoid these really, really strong emotions, and they are kind of come out, and if you're there for a child at the time, chances are that you're actually doing a really, really good job as a parent. But that can be difficult to see when your child is just screaming and crying, and you can just see the tremendous amount of distress. Again, especially for the neurodiverse population, your child being in a meltdown, being upset, being distressed, is not an expression of you being a bad parent. That's an expression of being in a very difficult situation for which there's almost no perfect solution. So that's the thing that's really important there. If it's a partner that's causing this, I would generally recommend that if the partner is taking a toll on the relationship like this, that partner most likely needs to seek psychological support elsewhere, because there's a limit to how much we can expect from our partner.
Amazing. Dr. Remo, once again, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Charlie.
I really appreciate it, and I do hope that we have the opportunity to definitely do this again soon.
All right, happy to.
Thank you very much, Dr. Remo. Take care, and hopefully see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you. So I hope you all enjoyed the expert webinar today with Dr. Remo. Every single week, we'll be hosting an expert webinar just like this one. So make sure that you stay tuned to find out who our guest will be for next week. But for now, I'll leave you with a short video which gives you more of an insight into our team of experts here at the Warrior Academy.
I'd love to introduce you to our team of experts here at the Warrior Academy.
So I'm a senior pediatric occupational therapist.
I'm a family well-being expert. I am a certified conscious parenting coach.
I'm a pre- and postnatal exercise specialist.
I work with children and parents in the area of cyberbullying prevention and digital wellness.
I am the co-creator and founder of Junior Gladiator Kidpreneurs.
I am a upper choice emotional coach and therapist.
I am a doctor and an expert in mental health.
First of all, parenting is tough. It's a journey of self-discovery And as much as we learn about our children, we also learn so much about ourselves going through this process. Ultimately, after working with 50,000 families around the world over the last 15 years, we've come to realize that if we really want to maximize the character development and the transformations that make young people, we need to work with parents as well. We need to provide an unparalleled level of support to parents as well as the children. Being a parent myself, I've realized that there are so many times during a parent's journey where a little extra support or some well-timed advice can make a huge difference to our lives and the lives of our children. In the Warrior Academy, we also believe that children copy what we do more than they listen to what we say. So as we take our children on a journey of self-development through martial arts, we want to provide our Warrior Academy parents with the same opportunity to grow and develop, because we know what an impact that will make to the children and to the family unit. Imagine having access to a team of experts to support your parenting journey. A team of the region's leading doctors, psychologists, therapists, best-selling authors, specialists in human psychology, behavioral psychology, special educational needs, ADHD, autism, bullying, cyber safety, family communication, and even addiction and eating disorders, as well as mindfulness and meditation and emotional regulation. So how can you as a parent work with our team of experts? Well, as a Warrior Academy member, you will get access to 3 things from our team of experts. Firstly, every month we'll be hosting a monthly webinar and a Q&A session on a specific topic. So these group webinars are for our Warrior Academy parents so that you can learn from the experts on a specific topic you're most interested in. You can discover more about a topic that you would like to learn about. The next thing you'll have access to is one-on-one referrals. So when you complete the character compass, our team will then get an insight into where we feel you could do with the additional support, if you do indeed need any additional support. We can then provide you with a 30 to 45 minute free consultation with one of our experts at no cost to you. The third thing we can provide you with is emergency support. Should you ever need emergency support with a time-sensitive and highly challenging situation, we will personally reach out to our team of experts to have a group discussion about the challenge you're going through to provide you with immediate assistance. The entire group suddenly springs into action to help you solve the problem you're facing. Now, this could be a serious and dangerous case of bullying. It could be the loss of a loved one or a family disaster. Of course, we hope this never happens, but what we want to do as a member of the Warrior family is provide our Warrior parents with a level of care and support like no other community out there.